Thank you for auditing the always positive, unedited new music review show hosted by a French professor who's here to tell you how King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard ruined my picnic. I'm going to be reviewing their new album, PetroDragonic Apocalypse, or Dawn of Eternal Light, an annihilation of planet Earth and the beginning of merciless damnation, by framing it around my excitement at seeing it was coming out. You see, I started this channel in 2018, and I've reviewed every single new King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard album since then, even the remix album. And my family and myself, we have loved their music, you know? We've loved their jammy, complex, microtonal, ambitious, fun, exciting music. We listened to Butterfly 3000 all the time. And when I saw that they were coming out with a new album last Friday, I was all excited. You know, my daughter took a couple tests on Thursday. It's the end of the school year, and we were planning to go to a lavender farm and buy lavender. I happen to love lavender. It's the only plant I care about, and I love it. We were buying some lavender, and we were driving like an hour away, and we were going to just sit there, and I told them the night before, and we're going to listen to the new King Lizard album on the way there. And then I get in the car, and we put the baby in. I have my two teenagers in the back, and we press play. And what I wanted, was just some other great, crunchy, complex jams. You know, the music that they've been making over the last couple years, where it's all, you know, very cool, complex, interesting rhythms and tones and chords and scales mixed in with a little bit of whoo to just get you excited. And I had it all set in my head, and I was going to drive, and I was going to be there, and it was going to be all nice and all sweet. And then I press play, and it's all thrash metal. Dragon, fossil fuel, oh my God. I'm like, all right, fine, let's go to the next track. You know, next track. All that stuff. And I had to turn it off, and we had to try to find something else. And it took us almost the entire drive to land on another song, another band to listen to, which I'm going to be reviewing later, probably this week. So is that their fault? Is it their fault that they ruined my picnic? Of course it's not, because when you love a band, you have to love all of them. And I'd seen from my comments that they had made other music that was basically thrash metal, but I assumed, they're not going to do that again. How could they move away from this awesome lane that they found, from this awesome sound, where I declared them, much to the consternation of many dead Fish and Goose fans, the greatest jam band in the world, you know? And then here they are, trying to be the best metal band in the world. And in reality, that's what makes them a great band. And I'm just late to the party, you know. I'm the Rip Van Winkle of rock music. I stopped paying attention, and if I were paying attention, I would have known this is part of the band. By the way, my throat still hurts from doing my impersonation of them. See, I'm gonna have to have a sip of my water here. It's that pudding. But you know, that's why to love them. You know, if you love an artist, you have to follow them. You have to try them in different styles. You have to see whether it's Neil Young or Radiohead or Kanye West or King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard. To love an artist that changes a lot is to love those changes and to learn to adapt to them. So I came to love this album. In a lot of ways, you know, I wonder, my fear with them is that they're too Fish-like. You know, like the band Fish, who's very much in love with their ability to do different things, that they run into the Dr. Ian Malcolm problem of just because you can, it doesn't mean that you should. But actually, when I was listening to this, I realized the band they remind me the most of, spiritually, is actually Weezer. Because, you know, Weezer goes through all these different genres and all these different styles, but their stylistic exercises with, at least as I see, soul. You know, they're not just doing it because they can. They're doing it because they want to and because it means something to them. And just because it is our tendency to try to pigeonhole bands in one place, it doesn't mean that we have to. But it also means that I understand why people don't like Weezer and why people don't like King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. We like predictability. We like knowing that the Starbucks coffee is going to be the same in Duluth, Minnesota, as it is in Qatar. So we want some kind of similarity, some kind of consistency. But, you know, that's not what they're here. Yeah, that's not what they're here for. But they totally ruined my picnic because it's not good music for driving gently in the car. Now, they did totally make my workout over the weekend, I went to the gym, the YMCA, where I do most of my listening. I worked out on the elliptical, and I did 4 miles and 600 calories over the span of the album. I was just burning the whole time. And it's perfect. And actually, to be fair, my picnic was ruined anyways. It was rainy. The baby was a little bit fussy. The lavender farm that we went to only had like these little teeny tiny 2-inch pots of lavender. It's like a lavender farm for ants. It's like, come on. I drive all the way out here and all you have is some soaps. Anyways. So what is it that made this album so perfect to work out to and so terrible to go on a picnic? Well, it's just such a great, and I want to first of all preface this by saying I'm not an expert in heavy metal music. So if the term thrash is not correct, please write me a long, and I'm not joking, a long explanation of why this is not considered thrash metal, what kind of metal it's considered, and I promise you I will pin it to the top of the discussion. To me, I hear stuff that makes me think of Metallica and Megadeth, and I just say, bam, that's thrash metal, okay? So feel free to correct me. I am not above being corrected. And I'm not below talking as though I know everything, okay? So it's so hard, but it's also surprisingly difficult to describe. There's so many things happening here. Unlike many other sort of thrash groups, or maybe it is like them. I don't know, but I feel like there's a lot more going on here than is even going on sort of peak Metallica in the 80s. So many different parts, so many different like styles within this style that you'll see. I tried to describe just one song, and it's almost impossible. It's as exhausting to try to review with great attention to detail as I think it is to play. The drummer is a name I need to memorize. Michael Kavanagh. Okay? This drumming is absolutely insane. It is completely insane drumming. It is not only fast, it is tasteful, it is interesting. At times it's leading melodically, not just in terms of, rhythmically. And he is just doing so many things that it's kind of unfair that like one of the best rock drummers is also one of the best heavy metal drummers. And this kind of leads into the fact that secretly, maybe this would have been okay for the picnic if I got over the growling sound, If I could have really listened, I would have noticed that it's actually still very jammy. It is as jammy as thrash metal can be. And then we get to the themes, and it's something I've criticized King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard for before, which is the same thing I criticize most jam bands for, which is, hey, your lyrics suck. And that goes for Grateful Dead. I saw them 20 times in concert. I understand Robert Hunter's a great poet, but I still think most of their lyrics are goofy as hell. Same thing with Fish. They get so into writing these interesting licks and learning how to play together that sometimes the lyrics just fall by the wayside. I think what King Gizzard has done that's quite interesting is they have sort of post-meta lyrics. Like they're singing about what they think is important, which is global warming, okay? And why not, Global annihilation was the great fear of the 80s. That's what I grew up with. And now we have a different form of global annihilation in the form of climate change, right? Which, of course, is very real and is very happening, and all this needs to be said. So, but they do it in such a way where they're so on the nose talking about Gaia and this album, a kind of almost a rock opera about a lizard dragon that drinks oil and spits fire and destroys the earth. It's so on the nose that it feels a little tongue-in-cheek. And I think that's the right answer. I think they cracked it. I think if, like, for instance, if the Grateful Dead sang about peace and love and doing lots of drugs, and they sort of pushed it one stage beyond how on the nose it was and made it somewhat meta-referential, somewhat like, yeah, we know this is goofy, Reach out to find that you are the eyes of the world. What if that lyric was, like, intentionally cheesy, and you sort of knew that? Maybe it's just a question of our very postmodern and cynical age. I don't know. The king, Gizzard, of the Lizard Wizards, Stu Mackenzie, described this album as such. It is about humankind and it's about planet Earth, but it's also about witches and dragons and shit. So I like that because in a way it makes me think like when you make music like this, that you're making music for those kids who are in the basement, with long stringy hair, listening to music with the panel, wood paneling on their walls. Wait, actually, I had long stringy hair and wood panel on my walls, but I didn't listen to metal. The point is, you get the idea of a sort of 80s metalhead. Think of the son from Memphis or Family, the Bill Burr show. And it feels like it's music for people like that when they make this kind of metal. But then the problem is we have to go, again, a very sort of postmodern way. We have to go one step beyond that and say, no, it's not for those kids. Those kids, first of all, mostly don't exist because of video games. Second of all, if those kids exist, they're not listening to King Gizzard. They're listening to actual metal, not Australian rock jam bands microtonally interpreting in a slightly prog way that music. So this isn't actually music for stringy-haired kids in their wood-paneled basements. It is music for people who remember that time and remember that music. And it's trying to imitate the feeling that you had listening to that music and knowing that those kids existed. Okay? That sounds pretty complicated, but I think that's what it is. And that's that distance, in the same way that when Weezer makes music that sounds like Kiss, they're not trying to be Kiss because Kiss doesn't exist anymore. So they're making music for people who remember what it was like to listen to Kiss. I think that's what's happening here. Now, the themes here are of apocalypse, and it's very hellish. And in case you don't know, I'm reading Dante right now. I actually just finished the Inferno, and I'm moving on to Purgatory. And this is my favorite image from Gustave Doré's adaptation of the Inferno. This is them talking to somebody who's in a tomb, kind of jumps out and starts speaking to them. The printer here at my school is very cheap, so they didn't put a lot of black ink in there. It's a much darker image. And I'm sort of obsessed with Dante because he's a very great writer and because a lot of our conception of heaven and hell is with him. And what's become the most interesting aspect, and the thing I repeat all the time, that in my opinion is the main thing to take from the Inferno, is not the, cool, gnarly punishments and all that. It's that we're not supposed to have pity for this guy. We're not supposed to have compassion. That everybody chooses hell. That's one of the themes of Dante's work, is that people choose their hell. Okay? So don't feel bad. Now, what does that have to do with this album? Well, we choose our hell of our destruction. Do not have pity for us. Do not have pity for humanity, who is destroying the earth in the name of the motor spirit and the great dragon god. This is what we are doing. And we are doing it on purpose. And I think that's why it's an interesting context to have. This is a black and white version of the album cover, which is actually very beautiful, all reds and yellows, with this central image. And I think this is important because part of what this album is trying to do, I think, is put you in that mindset of, being back in the 80s and listening to thrash metal. But part of that is also like looking at the album covers, especially when you're talking about wizards and witches and all that shit. As he says, a lot of it was like looking at, say, Led Zeppelin 4, not thrash metal, but heavy metal, and seeing the wizard character on the gatefold and just wondering, what is he doing? What is his story? Back in my day, you had to do a lot of work with these images and think, what do they mean? What do they say? And this is a beautiful image that very delicately, I would say, encapsulates the entire album. It's sort of devilish happiness, the look in its eyes, and you understand that, this is what it's about. This is what the album is about. This is the PetroDragon who is bringing the apocalypse. And you really need the album cover in your mind to properly understand what this album is about. See? You really need the album cover to understand what the album is about. But, I'm not going to go into all the lore. There's a ton of lore. This is all about this Gila monster who becomes a dragon, who becomes the bringer of death. It seems to be, it's a fairly simple metaphor for how something apparently fine and good, like human progress, like usage of oil to create plastics and to propel ourselves across the earth, has become abused and will bring about our own apocalypse. And there it is. And why not? Why not have that as a theme? It's an important thing to remember. So let me give you an example of the impossibility of reviewing this album by just taking the first track, Motor Spirit, right off the bat. Crushing guitars, they're doubled, and then some thrash drumming. 11 seconds in, we have our first example of these really awesome super fills. You get the sense that Kavanaugh's drum set is like one of those drum sets where it's like 2 bass drums and 78 toms, okay? The guy from Rush would love to have this many drums. That's how many drums this guy has in his drum set. And then he plays a different thrash beat impossibly fast. That's just 11 seconds in. And at 23 seconds, we pull back and we have a Metallica-like lead guitar line, and then the drums are just straight bashing. And then at 33 seconds, there's this crazy fill. And then all of a sudden, we're having tap licks, which is where you use your other hand to play notes on a guitar. That kind of sound. It's a sort of very fast sound. And then there's this beautiful moment where the toms on the drums are interacting with the notes that are being tapped on in the tap licks. And it's just an absolutely astonishing, gorgeous, amazing little tiny moment that lasts less than 9 seconds, because at 42 seconds, the tap licks get a little bit sweeter, the toms back off a little bit, and then at 46 seconds, we just have this guitar playing a sort of high-flying Black Sabbath-style riff. Like Black Sabbath obviously gets a lot of credit for its influence, but I think part of the reason why they're so important is they help to sort of take the developments of Led Zeppelin and kind of simplify them a bit and just make them a little bit more crushing, a little bit more straightforward. At 50 seconds, we have some great snare work, which leads into the lyrics. We get the voice where this is basically growling, a little bit of time signature fun that I don't really want to describe here. The drums are working super hard, and then we have these lyrics. Oh, holy rabble, we art ensnared, to quiver liketh rippled air. First of all, he's using all doth liketh. It's funny because I'm listening to a fairly oldie-fashioned translation of Dante. Diocese of did melt sand, worship thy chroming hand, coal-black cloud horizon, maketh land-born petromyzin, summeth forth thy mitre spirit, drink the fucking gas and killeth. So this real image of the motor spirit, which is the whole theme of the album, that's what we live in. We've replaced a belief in God or nature with our belief in progress, progress in the form of loving oil. At 1:16, the verse goes over, there's these overkill fills and guitar, and then at 1 minute 28 seconds there's a guitar riff and the voices get doubled, and this is the first instance of a kind of low voice that pairs it. I don't know if it's supposed to sound like a didgeridoo. I don't know if that's being Australianist because they're from Australia. I don't know. Maybe it's actually throat singing, which is what it sort of sounds like. Maybe it's just a digital effect. Maybe it's just a chaos box. Maybe it's just a vocoder of some sort. Whatever it is, you have someone talking like this, and then underneath, talking like this. And it creates a really great ominous feeling that you're hearing the motor spirit. Light the fuel, propagate oxygen and heat, deify motor spirit, kiss goodbye the weak. Again, is this tongue-in-cheek or is this totally earnest? Crazy high toms right at this point at 2 minutes and 5 seconds. This huge drum set. Motor spirit then the word motor spirit just keeps getting matched with that low gurgly sound. Motor spirit. The drums are playing, again, impossibly fast fills. We get to the third verse, black buckets everywhere, brimming, spewing millionaires, talking about the way that people make money off of this apocalypse. And then 2 minutes and 41 seconds, a nice lyrical guitar solo, almost out of nowhere. Drummer's going absolutely crazy. This guitar riff is descending and then ends with these crazy notes. There's a double guitar that's bending these notes up. I'm telling you, it's really hard to describe this music because you just hear it and you just hear, but if you actually listen carefully, take as an example the moments between 2:41 and 3:04. Listen to all the things that are happening. The guitar, the drums, everything. It's an instance. It's not a thing that's repeated throughout the rest of the song. It's an instance. These 8-minute songs where everything sounds kind of the same, but they're filled with instances, and this band has to know all of them and follow each other. I don't know how they do it. They're a very good band. At 3 minutes and 4 seconds, a Metallica style, like drums are on toms, bass interlude. Think of sort of like the interlude in Enter Sandman, where it's just like the toms and the bass and kind of low. Guitar's just playing some chords. The drummer, at this point, is just playing a solo. You could do an isolated drum track and it would just sound like a drum solo, but he's using the tones of his million-piece drum set to create different melodies because, the toms have a different sound. So he's using those tones, and the rhythms becomes almost jammy. At 3 minutes and 34 seconds, the bridge lyrics come in with his double voice. Maybe even it reminds me of Dune. The weird kind of didgeridoo, like throaty voice sound that sings there. I don't know, Dune, Mad Max, kind of a post-apocalyptic thing here. Oh, shit. I just said Mad Max. I'm trying not to be an Australianist. I'm sorry. It's a very rich culture filled with many different things, not just didgeridoos and Mad Max. So it's like a drum solo with other stuff around it. Fire, pious side effects, guarana, drama. Oh no, there's a lawnmower right outside my window. The audio might get terrible here. It is. But you know what? This is actually going to work. I'm going to allow this to work into my video as opposed to stopping it and restarting it because that's the Petro monster outside, He's this guy with a goatee and a big gut and like Oakley sunglasses, and he's driving his Gila monster, his Gila monster lawnmower that's spewing out black smoke everywhere. My window is actually getting covered with black smoke. Okay, imagine that as you hear the sound get worse and worse on this video. Saved it. At 4 minutes and 18 seconds, the term motor spirit is the mantra, comes back. Still a drum solo. 4 minutes and 40 seconds starts to shift with the cymbal crashes. Oh my God, he's right outside. He's right outside my window. Man, he's got a good head of hair though. He's kind of an older guy. So he's got kind of like a gray hair thing on. He's got headphones on so other people can't hear. So he protects his hearing while hurting other people's hearing. That guy is bringing about the apocalypse. Anyways, 4 minutes and 40 seconds. The cymbals start to change. It's on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 on these little tiny, almost like a splash cymbal, and then doubles it with the last words of the bridge. Then we get to 4 minutes and 52 seconds where we get to almost silence. The guitar has a new riff, super simple, single notes, a little bit of chords here and there. 5 minutes and 10 seconds, the drums build up in the tom and snares. It's a very sort of typical heavy metal drum trick where you play a tom, the floor tom and the snare. I think the only time on the album they does that trick. Then like a double guitar solo, shredding and awesome. The Kavanaugh's playing the ride cymbal on the bell on the ride cymbal, which is quite exciting. Slight little pauses and hiccups to remind you that they are kind of a proggy band at times. Then there's a whole verse in this iteration of the verse. Almost Hendrixy guitar solo at 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Drums are all on the cymbals. For the next verse, 6 minutes and 8 seconds, we now have the verse again, but it's now with pauses where the words and guitars are on the same beat. Engine, Gaia, piston, wheeze. Drums are stopping and starting, the Messiah on their knees. 6 minutes and 24 seconds, another guitar solo interlude, over simple riff from the beginning of the second half. 6 minutes and 42 seconds, more drum fills, and yet another super fast part. Very guitar, very Black Sabbath guitar riff like. Just a whole different new part here at 6 minutes and 42 seconds. At 7 minutes, one of my favorite bits that Kavanaugh's doing here, he's playing the hi-hats on the offbeats, a closed hi-hat on the offbeat. The 8th verse is over this new part. 7 minutes and 28 seconds, a guitar riff and a full bit with drums. Doth protest, the heat doth scorch the landeth, naught but ash thy handeth. At 7 minutes and 50 seconds, just growling voice and toms and sustained guitar lines. And it ends at 8 minutes and 15 seconds with the primary mantra of the entire song, the entire album, motor spirit. Just guitar and toms here at the end. They sound straining, they sound tired, and it seamlessly, breathlessly, tirelessly leads into the second song. You want me to do that for every track on this album? Because I don't. I don't think you wanted me to do that for that, but I'm trying to illustrate a point. Point is, this is great music, and it's very complicated, and it's very interesting, and it's deceptively rich. The whole album segues from one song into another. I almost wish they did what Paul Simon did. Hey, am I the only person to compare King Gizzard to Paul Simon? There you go. That's why I watch Professor Skye. Because, he just had his last album and all felt very similar. Everything led into itself as just one song. This feels like this is just one song. They could have just called this whole album Motor Spirit. But yet that's one of the sentences that's not in the title. Supercell is about a big storm, bashing cymbals, whining guitar, thrashing low chugs. Just great. So many fun, interesting parts. Almost like a white zombie riff leads this one. Sort of a funny part where, like, he says, and it leads into a choppy part. Kavanaugh, drummer, working so hard. Kind of satire at points. Like, I almost wonder if this is not a satire of thrash. Leads directly into Converge. This has more of these great toms descending. Just stops and starts, and another Black Sabbath style guitar line. May Lord have mercy on our soul. This is where they're watching a superstorm from the International Space Station. It's kind of a fun story. I could imagine a great movie being made to this. There's a beautiful bit where the riff on the guitar is accompanied by the voice. Again, they just do all these different things. Sometimes the voice goes directly along, sometimes it doesn't. It's almost punk-like at times, just full tom madness. The melodic possibilities of an impossibly big drum set are here. Very kind of punctuate, like paired with these punctuated guitar lines as they come in. At times, the toms and the guitars are doing basically the same thing. Everything converges. The song's called Converge, which leads perfectly into the song Witchcraft, which, taken out of its context, makes me realize that if I had started with this song, maybe I wouldn't have allowed this to ruin my picnic. It sort of reminds me a lot of sort of Wicker Man. I don't know. Like, songs about witchcraft often feel kind of goofy and lame. But according to Lyric Genius, this is about these witches who conjure the Gila monster to destroy the world. So sort of like there's more human interaction. This song has the first woo that is on the entire album, and it does make me feel happy because I live for the woos. I want to woo and I want to headbang during the song. The tap licks are like interlocking. They're beautiful. One of the best parts of the entire album is the way tap licks are used, and especially in this song, the way they interlock, and then it goes right back to just punishing metal. There's almost like a jazzy bit with just a clean bass line and drums. Seriously, like if you took this out of context, you can imagine this was a jazz fusion album. Then a twisting, clean guitar. There's like a very melismatic guitar solo. Almost sounds like a flute. Another woo leads directly into Gila Monster. Probably my favorite song on the album. It's their first single. It makes sense. If I heard this first, I would have been fine, but I didn't. Starts off again with a little tom solo, a nice little guitar solo, more of that melismatic, like kind of connected glissando style. Ends in more tap licks. I love the Gila part. It's like playing with the audience. It's also doing a sort of Rammstein playing with fascism style thing where I can tell this song destroys in concert because it requires so much audience there. It almost sounds like we're whipping the Gila monster like a beast of burden. I am the Gila Godzilla gorilla. I think you should leave. Talks about Godzilla the gorilla. I hadn't thought of that. I'm gonna have to go on to the Reddit and mention the fact that Godzilla the gorilla, rest in peace. Next song is called Dragon. Most melodic guitar line here. It's just dancing all over the place. Real heavy metal jazz fusion on the ride cymbal here. Basically, this is the jammy stuff I want on my picnic. The back half of this album was a lot more what I was hoping for. But then I got kind of bummed because it went away from this jammy stuff back into the thrash stuff, kind of like double bass drum shuffle, more of that didgeridoo low sound, that throat singing sound, whispering sounds with toms and the word dragon all over the place. Nice little break with bass and drums, slightly open hi-hat, very, very badass part in the song. It sings about dawn of eternal night. That appears to be the theme of how the apocalypse is described. Little kind of a freak out little bell cymbal part, more of a jammy riff here. Again, a lot more jamming in the second half here. It's almost like an impossibly riffy jam. And I'm running out of words to describe this album beyond impossible. The album ends with the track Flamethrower, another beautiful tom-filled explosion, and then it leads into a song that sort of reminds me of the track One by Metallica. So if you don't know One, it's famous because it has a double bass drum. When you get a double bass drum pedal, which I got when I was a teenager, the most important thing you could possibly do is learn how to play the one riff. This has that kind of feeling. It's more complex than that. Obviously, it's more rhythmically interesting, but it reminds me of that. And this is where I was at the gym and I was listening to this song and I was tired as hell because I'd just been, healer, healer, monster, just going. And I see this song is 8 minutes long and I'm not going to stop working out. And so I'm like, I need this energy and the growling singing and like chunky. And if this term makes sense to you, God bless you. But the term that comes to me is guttural guitars throughout this song. Soul blackened by the dark arts, strike fear in the mortal hearts, taketh to the sky with blazing darts, flame those foolish lazy fucks. I do like how they use swears for comedic effect. Even his description of the album, you know, it's about witches and shit. Flame these foolish lazy fucks. Again, we choose our hell, okay? And it is our laziness at this point which is allowing us to destroy the world. Flamethrower, flame thrower. I like how it's repeated. Sort of delay like we hear. Again, sort of an audience participation. Another guitar part with going with a voice. Just a quiet bit with almost nothing in the middle. I thought it was done. I was getting ready to wind down. It says like 4 more minutes left. Another tom drum solo, guitar back. Just a beautiful moment and builds into a full woo style jam. There's like this flanged guitar solo underwater and cool. More of that throat singing. Motor, spirit. And it ends with Gaia set to self-destruct, flamethrower, complacent fucks. Again, going there. That's who we are. Humanity, according to King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, humanity are lazy, complacent fucks. That is who we are. Ends with this bubbling sound, and it's clear that the dragon has won. You know, that the dragon has come and turned the earth into hell. And that's where we live, and that's where we are. And that's what we chose. Because you see that guy? He's a complacent fuck. I forgot my Patreon thing here because I'm working at my office. I'm waiting for an email, and so I use that as an excuse to stop working and do this video. What did you think of the album? Did you like the picnic? Do you enjoy lavender as much as I do? Munstead lavender is the only stuff that can really live through the winter up here in Rochester. I've tried like 7 different varieties. Varietals? What are you supposed to say? I don't know. But I love lavender. Until next time, there's the camera.